Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where our commitment is to help, hope, and healing of our veteran family and our nation. I'm Jim Blythe, a U.S. Navy veteran and a certified senior advisor. Join us as we continue the mission of leadership and commitment to our communities and our great country. Why, you never know where we're going to go or who you're going to meet. We invite you to join in, plug in, and share in what we do. This is your Veterans Impact Show.
Well, welcome aboard, and what a great day, man. The sun is out, the rains have stopped, and it's still snowing in Amarillo. Good grief, I got to tell you, this is that time of year. I want to reintroduce you to one of the most fantastic ministers I have ever studied with. Cedric White, you are amazing. Thank you for taking me into your church, but also what you do with marriage counseling to veterans and active duty military. I got to tell you, Diane and I went through it, and it is truly amazing.
Praise God.
You really, really help people. So I highly encourage you to go to Cedric's website and tell him what it is, brother.
Healing Thine Heart. Thine, Thine, hearts.org.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, it doesn't take a whole lot to get him to help you. Now, today I'm going to introduce an amazing man that I just met a week or so ago, and I've read his book. So I'd like to introduce you to Captain Ben Duelley, United States Navy, retired. Ben, your book is amazing. I just finished it last night, and you see this worn out deal that I've already got, and gone through it and made notes. You wrote a tremendous book, and what we're going to do is sort of start at the very end before we jump back to the beginning, because you got the message more than once to tell your story.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you did.
Absolutely.
So let's start at the beginning then. You are a Naval Academy graduate. So tell us about what motivated you to get into the Navy and what you experienced.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of people that from a young age kind of know what they want to do with military. They might look up into the skies and see an airplane flying by, and they're like, I'm going to do that one day. I was not that kid. I was looking for culture. I grew up as an athlete. I was involved in wrestling and football, and I love that culture of teamwork and camaraderie. And so, junior year, senior year of high school, I started getting recruited for wrestling, and I looked at a couple schools, and it just didn't have the culture that I felt when I stepped on the grounds of the Naval Academy. And in the back of my head, I knew that I was going to be active duty at one point, but that wasn't my focus. I was like, this place is awesome. I get to hang out with like a bunch of my best friends, kind of thinking the same way. And so that's the story about how I got involved there.
I think it's great because you went through wrestling, you graduated from the academy, you went and you couldn't see quite well enough, so you couldn't be a pilot, but you became a naval flight officer. And a lot of people don't understand what that means. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, and I didn't know what it meant either, to be honest. And so naval flight officer is the backseat guy or girl in naval aviation. Think Goose in Top Gun. And that was not my first choice. Actually, throughout my whole career, I always made this joke of I always got my second choice. The Navy got the choice for me, and I wanted to do this, and they did that for me. I wanted to do this, and they did that. Even aviation wasn't my first choice. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And who doesn't want to do that? I mean, They're a bunch of bad people doing cool things. And then I jumped in the pool for the first time and realized that maybe that wasn't in the cards. And I was a swimmer at my grandfather's pool, but like that was just going from the shallow end to the deep end. So eventually when I saw that I could go aviation, I was like, that's it for me. And then I did my eye exam. You have to be 20/30 in both eyes, and I was 20/40, I think, at the time. And I was like, well, that's dumb. It's just one eye that's 20/40. Who flies around like this? But the path that was open for me and available for me was naval flight officer. And I continued my whole career going, like I said a couple minutes ago, hey, I want to go do that next. And then the Navy would be like, nah, you're going to go do that. And that's how I ended up flying in the E-2C Hawkeye, which, again, this is 99-ish time frame. there's internet, but it's not readily
Right.
accessible. I
Right.
didn't know what an E2 Hawkeye was, and there was no internet to look it up. I could have gone to a library, I guess, or gotten an encyclopedia to see like what this E2C Hawkeye is. But it's a surveillance platform. You might have seen, it's not in a lot of movies, but we did get a cameo in Top Gun Maverick, which was pretty cool. But it's a surveillance platform. We are the command and control of the aircraft carrier strike group. We're the first to launch. We go up and we're the quarterbacks of the fleet. So I got to experience that for 24 years of my career, and it was amazing. I loved every minute of it.
For a lot of people that don't know, this is a twin-engine turboprop plane.
Yes, sir.
Your maximum altitude is probably 29,000 feet. It has a big radome on top, and you literally become the most important person in the plane, except for the pilot. I mean, you rank over him when you go into the situation because you are controlling. You are looking at the radar. You have a team in there. You are controlling the battle, for lack of a better term.
Yes, and I would never tell a pilot they're not the most important person in the airplane because
Right.
they are. But yes, we were the most important in the back, controlling the mission because we work with all the other assets, in that carrier strike group, whether it's an airplane or a ship or anything that's trying to take the fight forward. So we have a piece in that as the E2.
So an interesting thing, because I've actually landed on a carrier, not an E2, but in a COD, which is the same plane. And when number one, when you take off on a carrier, it is an experience that you will never forget.
Yeah.
The first one. I mean, it literally impales you back into the seat. Then when you land on a carrier, it's a controlled crash.
Yeah.
And you're thinking with a turboprop, you're going to be a little bit slower than those jets, but you're really not.
It's a little slower, and the words take off and land are used very
Relative.
loosely.
Yes,
getting
very
shot
true.
off the front. I mean, it's one of the most exhilarating things you could ever have happen. But every time it happens, there's a little tiny prayer inside that goes, please let this go
Yes.
right. Especially in the E2, so we don't have an ejection seat.
No.
And so if something goes wrong, you're jumping out.
Now, one other, I never saw anything go wrong in one of those, but I saw plenty of other things. And because I was on carriers, I made 3 combat tours.
Right.
You were on
I was on a
cruisers.
cruiser.
Yeah.
I was on a cruiser. We shot at you. I was a gunner's mate missile tech, and
Yeah.
we shot at the things that were in the air and submarines and things like that. So that's what we did.
Well, that brings an interesting point. You're up, and I was Vietnam. You were in the Middle East, the Iraq, Afghanistan.
Yep.
Did you ever have a feeling of, I'm a sitting duck up here. I got no armor. I got nobody, and I'm by myself in this team. And if they want to shoot a missile at us, we got a big problem.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. We, again, as the E2, we are alone and unafraid. We kind of build sanctuary through altitude and standoff. But a lot of the combat that the U.S. has seen from an aviation standpoint in the last 20 years has been over Iraq, Afghanistan. And Afghanistan, you're just alone and unafraid. So yes, a lot of times there's that thought in the back of your head of like, okay, hope this goes well.
And the tactics that we were using in Vietnam were basically World War II tactics. You guys were developing new sets of tactics in the Middle East. And it was all new battlefield, all new terrain, all new deal. But what were some of the things that were beginning to happen to you internally in terms of stress and in terms of pain that you were getting? That you maybe, oh man, one more cat shot and I'll never walk again, or one more recovery.
Yeah.
What are some of these things that were beginning to happen to you, Ben?
So it's interesting, like growing up, what I sort of lived through, what was modeled for me, what I got to learn was like a suck it up buttercup mentality.
Yeah.
Right. That's what, on one hand, makes people very, very successful.
Right.
In that I don't want a group of people that just quit when times
Right,
get tough and
right.
adversity sets in. I want you to suck it up. I was also, what was modeled for me is there's no crying. There's no crying in baseball, or I'll give you something to cry about. If anybody was
Right.
born in the 1900s, probably
Right.
heard that
Oh,
once or
yeah.
twice of like, I'll give you something to cry
Right.
about. And so again, while it makes somebody very successful because it builds that type A, like go-getter mentality. At the same time, what I never learned, and this is, I put it on me, I never learned how to deal with that later. And so I became a master at compartmentalization. And whether it was an event that was happening in my life or an emotion, we're getting ready to go on this flight. I got a wife who's 8 months pregnant, and maybe there's some stuff going on at home, or maybe my best friend just died of cancer, or this person just died by suicide.
Right. You have to put it out.
I don't have time for that right now. I'm going to shove this in a box, and I'm going to put it in a closet, and then later I'll never come back and look at that box again. And so throughout my career, every little tiny stress, that's how I dealt with it. I never learned to effectively deal with that stress and emotion. And that started to catch up with me later in my career as the stressors would get bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, after I had a meltdown, and there's a spoiler, there was a meltdown that's coming in my life. But after I had that meltdown, when I met with a counselor, I kind of joked with him because, of course, we use humor to hide what we're really feeling, right? And so I said, man, I don't know what's going on. Like, it's not like I was chained up in a basement and beaten as a kid. Like, I just had normal stuff going on in life. And he goes, listen, man, he goes, every guy or girl that I ever talked to is pretty much going through the same thing. Like, there's not a lot of this trauma that people think about, that you read about in horrific stories or see in Hollywood or in the movies. Most of the time, it's just life. And if you think of your life as a plate and every little stress is a pea, and you just put a little pea on that plate. Well, if you eat it while it's getting put on the plate, like, you have no problems digesting what's put in front of you. But if you don't touch it, eventually it's just one little tiny pea, and then that whole plate topples over. And that's where I was getting later in my career. And that's, that was my tipping point when I had sort of a meltdown, is that one little pea that I just didn't even see coming. Somebody snuck it on the plate, and the whole plate just toppled.
Cedric, you see this all the time in counseling.
Yes. We call it that one straw.
Yeah.
That finally breaks the camel's back, right? You don't know how much this camel can hold. It's been doing a great job. It's been carrying it. But eventually, one final straw, very light, right? And most of the time when it topples, when it breaks, it's really something that seems to be really irrelevant. Yeah. It's not that big a deal, but when it happens, right?
Yeah.
It's a culmination of everything that's been going on. And most of the time, for years, sometimes for decades, we've been packing it in, and finally it has to be dealt with. And some people get help. Others, unfortunately, hide until it's unbearable, and then we see the suicide. And that's where we're trying to help others to understand. I love what you said, right? Alone and unafraid, right? We carry that as a badge of honor for a long time until we realize, number one, we don't have to be alone, and it's okay to be fearful of some things because there is healthy fear.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we handle it the right way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And so, Ben, I want to sort of stop here and say there's 3 truths that you show in your book. Let's cover those real quick as we begin to then peel this story back, which I think is amazing. So I want to, first of all, where can we go and get your book?
It's available on Amazon. We've got paperback, hardcover, we've got Kindle version. A couple people have asked, is there an audiobook? And I need a deep voice to be my audiobook.
Are you looking?
I know a guy.
Looking at me, Ken?
I know a guy.
Yeah, well, you got to fit into my schedule because that would be not a pea, but a brick right now that would bring the house of cards down. But you know what? I would do that because this resonates with me. You tell stories in here that, no, I didn't go through exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
But I was there and I saw somebody else go through it. Mm-hmm. Or I went through something similar to this. And I'm like, wow. So this doesn't, when you're talking about the peas on the plate, this isn't one big bam.
Nope.
This is little bits over time.
Yes.
And you're right, because I grew up in a military family. My grandfather was career Navy, started stoking coal, 1920, machinist mate. Ended in 1952 as command of a ship as a lieutenant commander. He went through some of the worst of the battles in the Pacific. That was his deal. He never said, suck it up, Buttercup. He was like, Jim, you're going to do this, be a man. Do it right.
Yes.
You're going to dig this hole to plant this potato, then dig it like a man. You're going to fix this lawnmower, take your time, then put your tools back. He was so absolutely, and I idolized my grandfather.
Yeah.
Where on the other hand, my father grew up in the Great Depression in World War II, and he was a CPA. So he was always living in fear of we're not going to have enough money, fear of this, fear of that. When I got a driver's license, I am not joking. He announced to the whole family that he just bought $1 million umbrella policy because he feared me driving the car. Whoa. I began to see myself in your character. And that's why I want people to go take a look at this book. And Ben, where can they get this one page that I have? I don't remember where I got it.
I emailed it to you.
Oh, you did?
I will make it available, though, to anybody who wants to see it.
Okay, so how can people reach
absolutely.
you? Where's your email?
So you can find me on my website, it's benduelley.com. The normal spelling, Duelley.
Yes.
Not like the truck. And then on the website, they can get to the Amazon link. You can get to email, and all my social medias can be found right there on the site.
Okay, Duelly.
EY. Again, like normal. Like
Yeah. That's okay. One of my pilots was named Dooley, and he didn't learn how to spell it the way you did. But what are the 3 truths, real quick? Let's tell that,
Yeah.
and then let's unpack it by telling your story.
Sure. Well, I'll caveat this by saying I'm not a certified or licensed counselor. I didn't study this. This is just my own observations from going through some serious struggles where, I found myself in the darkest of places. And the first one was that the signs were hard to detect, and they can be harder to tell than you would think. And so, we were kind of talking a few minutes ago. I remember that some of the initial suicide training that we got early in the military was like it's almost cartoonish sort of signs to look out for. Like, hey, if someone starts giving away their stereo, then that's a clear sign. My wife had no idea. She had no idea that I had been struggling for years. And that was one of the things that was sort of shocking because I didn't notice it myself. I was just going through some things and I thought I could suck it up and get through it. But those struggles and those signs were all there. It was just hard for someone to pick up.
This is important. So we're going to continue to unpack this as we talk about struggles. How many of us have had struggles.
Yes.
And Cedric, you deal with these struggles all the time of the people that come to you, but you've had struggles as well. So we're going to be talking about this, about help, hope, and healing. We're going to be talking about the struggles, seeking help, and then reaching out. Because if you don't, you won't. All right, we're going to be right back after these messages. This is Veterans Impact Show. Cedric and I are here with Ben Duelley. We're here for you. Hang in. This is going to be a great ride. Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Hearts Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation. Hey, this is really great. I got to tell you real quick, I want to say a special thank you, not only Ben for you being here, but to DBTV Network for all they do, putting us on Amazon Fire and Roku. We're now on twice a week on Saturdays and on Wednesdays. So take a look at through DBTV, your Amazon Fire, Roku. It's a lot of fun. We're glad you're here. And that's a great network that's an internet network. Now, I also want to thank our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, my mortgage company. My NMLS number is 311-548, and our corporate one is 2289. We are an equal opportunity lender, and I specialize in senior care, better known as reverse mortgage lending. But I got to tell you, we also partner with your church, Cedric, which is fantastic, the Heart Fellowship, and we partner with Symbios Integrative Health, bringing all that we're talking about, help, hope, and healing, to help our, not only veterans, but help our community.
Yes.
If we help a veteran, then we're going to be helping people in the community. Right. All right, let's go back, and I'm sorry I sort of do all that, but keep lawyers and everybody happy, and promote what we believe in, which is helping people. Now, we're talking about the struggles,
Yeah.
and you were really, really struggling, and the P's were piling up. Okay, then seeking help, that was a real issue, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I tell a story in the book, and I think this is just representative of what we dealt with, especially as leaders. So a friend of mine was running one of the large aviation bases in the country, and unfortunately, he had a suicide. Well, he was the commanding officer. And I remember him telling me a story. He said, I got up and I sat in an auditorium with a bunch of people in my command, and I looked everybody in the eye and said the words that we've heard and we've delivered as leaders before, like, hey, there's this tragic event that just happened. We all feel for the family. There's so much emotion going on. There's counselors available, right? There's counselors available. Come, there's no stigma, right? Go talk to them. Use the resources that are here. After that meeting, he went back to his office, and one of the counselors followed him back in and just sitting across from him and said, hey, sir, how you doing? And he goes, I'm good. Fine, this sucks, but like, I'm good. And she goes, no, seriously.
How are you doing?
How are you doing? And he said, I kind of looked at her and be like, I'm fine. And he started to get visibly angry. He's like, leave me alone. And he was telling me, he's like, my thought was, hey, there's help available for those weak enough that need it. I don't need it. But if you're not strong enough, go ahead. Go ahead. Right. And I won't hold it against you, but everybody else is going to hold it against me. And the military's done a fantastic job, since I was in, and I'm sure since you guys were in too, of trying to get rid of the stigma of reaching out. But it still exists. Whether or not it's spoken or unspoken, it still exists, especially in some of the high stakes communities, like aviation, special warfare, those kind of things. We're like, hey man, we got to go do this mission. I don't have time to go speak to this counselor. I'm not going to go sit on somebody's sofa and put my feet up and tell them like how sad I am. And so that was another truth that I realized, because I held that inside of like, well, I don't need to talk to anybody. Like, I'm strong enough. I can suck it up. I can get through this. But if you're weak and you need to go talk to somebody, you go right ahead. You go right ahead.
You know, Ben, one of the things you just reminded me of was what I noticed about my pilots and the other pilots on our carrier that were the fighter pilots. My squadron was the attack squadron that basically was the point of the spear. We were the guys, we had 12 killed in action, 5 POWs. John McCain was one of them. And they didn't show fear. They didn't want to show, I think, what they were feeling.
There's no time for or room for emotions. Right, in that situation. The problem is, when do you take time to feel the feelings? When do you take time? And most of the time you go from one point of action to another point of action to another point of action. And so it just gets packed down more and more. And it's not just military. It's not just the veterans. It's the first responders that we deal with, right? Police. Quite often people forget about the dispatcher that takes the call, right? And has to talk this person through while they're waiting on the officers or the firemen to get there. And I deal with a lot of that as well. And people don't think about it. They're that hidden group that nobody really, but they're feeling and experiencing and hearing everything that's going on in these situations. Captain, you mentioned a moment ago that, a lot of times just people in regular life experience those P's of trauma, right, that get added to the plate. And we see the grandiose things, the veterans, the military, the first responders, but there are people who are living just daily lives, whose plate is full, and they're 1 P away from it toppling over.
I got to tell you, so this is significant in recognizing that and then going and asking for help. Because we really, military, when I was in, you weren't allowed to. I mean, you need to go to the psychiatric ward? Time out, your career is over. More than that, though, we were in situations where we were doing 24-hour flight ops, 7 days a week sometimes. Now, we would only stay on the line for about 30 days. We stayed on the line for 45 days one time. Guys, let me tell you, everybody on that aircraft carrier was Looney Tunes. We were dangerous to each other. And that's how it can build, and you don't even realize it. Like you said, I didn't realize I had it. My grandfather told me after some of the battles that he was in Okinawa and Iwo Jima, where he was XO, a refueling ship, he'd take a pot of coffee and a couple of packs of cigarettes, go sit on the fantail and shake for 2 or 3 hours because he knew it was coming again.
Right.
All right. We talk about this for military. We were just talking about that. And first responders, my goodness gracious, police officer goes through it every day.
Yeah.
And then they have to go home.
Right.
Boots on, boots off.
on, boots off.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what you teach.
Right.
How do you take the boots off? Well, when we come back, we're going to talk more with Ben Duelley, Captain Ben Duelley, United States Navy, about how do you take the boots off? How do you take that and get yourself restored where you're not dangerous to other people, you're dangerous to yourself?
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to be right back after these words. And thank you for being part of Veterans Impact Show with Cedric and I. We're here for you. We want you to tune in, join in, be a part of it, follow us. Go to Cedric's website as well. And I got to tell you, you're going to have a great time. So this is Veterans Impact Show. We're here for you. Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Hearts Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation.
Reaching out is harder.
Yeah, hey, this is Jim Blythe, and I'm here with Captain Ben Duelley, United States Navy,
Yes, sir.
and he was an NFO. Let me back up for people who are just now tuning in. What a naval flight officer is not the command pilot of the plane, but it can be the navigator. You can be the bombardier, like in an F-18 or the intruder that we had. You could be the NFO handling the computers in the E-2, which you did. Here's one of the interesting things. You did both. You did the E-2 and you did the F-18. So that gave you two perspectives of the battle.
Yeah.
Okay? But that also gave you so many opportunities that every time you took a cat shot off, every time you did a recovery, every time you were up there at 20 some odd thousand feet, well, when you go to 20,000 feet, you're on oxygen. You can't survive. All of these things are tremendous stressors,
Yeah.
really tremendous. How did you go about reaching out?
Well, I think that's part of my problem is I didn't.
That's it.
The last few minutes we've been talking about some of the things that I took away, and the third one for me was reaching out was way harder than I thought. Even as much time as we spent talking about mental health and here are the resources available, the very thing that put me in that position, that sort of suck it up, get through this mentality. Like
I love the
it's all on
term
me.
you use, suck it up, buttercup.
Oh,
Because it indicates you're weak.
Yeah.
If I pulled out my phone and I searched my text messages for suck it up, you would see that just ingest 3 or 4 times from
Right.
friends that just
Right.
be like, suck it up, man. But that mentality, though, again, I spoke about this earlier, what makes you successful at the same time, that suck it up, get through this mentality was the shield that I put up in front of me that prevented me from ever saying, hey, I need help. I need help. I'm a little bit weak here. Because that just, those words coming across my tongue, like, oh, you're weak? Like, what are you talking about? And so that all started to build throughout my career. Again, as I mentioned before, the stress has got sort of bigger, higher stakes. Now there's kids and involved in family and everything. That I didn't reach out. And that was one of my problems.
Cedric, don't we see this in the culture of men? Now, it's very exaggerated, what I call the fighter jock mentality. You got to have that kind of mentality to get in an airplane that'll do supersonic, carry missiles, bombs. Somebody's going to be trying to kill you. You got to have what I call the fighter jock mentality, that you are indestructible, that you are the next thing to God. We used to joke,
Right.
what's the difference between a fighter pilot and God? God knows who he is. Fighter pilot thinks he knows he's God.
I got to write that one down. Yeah. That's really good.
Okay, but this is also in the Brotherhood of Men. As a child growing up, You had it, Cedric.
It's huge. It's huge. As we're talking, my mind is reminiscing when I went through my life struggle. It wasn't in the military, right? It was afterwards. It was in ministry, right? Where I had to put up that persona, that shield that I was invincible, right? But when my life started to fall apart, and someone was telling me, as a matter of fact, my wife, now that we're getting ready to celebrate 27 years, was trying to get me to go to counseling to get some help, right? To try and save my then marriage. She was trying to, because she had gone through it and she had gotten help. And she was trying to get me in. And my thing was, from a cultural perspective, from a man perspective, suck it up.
Yeah.
You're tough. And how are you going to represent God and have problems?
Yeah.
How are you going to represent God, right? And I'm preaching to people and I'm ministering to people, and I've got a problem. I can't have that. So I hid to the point to where it got so bad to where my nephew was coming by every day after work, checking on me, because my diet had become Frosted Flakes and Excedrin PM.
Man.
That was my diet for 2 weeks.
Wow.
Frosted Flakes and Excedrin PM.
No milk.
No, just Frosted Flakes, just enough water to get the Excedrin PM, because I didn't want to feel it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to face it. And what I've come to learn is God won't fix what you won't face. You have to be willing to face that thing first.
That's good.
You have to ask for it.
Yes, you have to be willing to, first of all, be vulnerable and say, I need it. And that was, I didn't want to let anybody know that I really needed help, that I was hurting. I was afraid of that. I was afraid of how it would look. Right? And my ministry friends and everything. I was afraid. And same thing in military. Same thing from a first responder. They don't want to look as if I need help. And what I've come to find out, and what I tell men, because quite often I have to meet with the man first because they don't want to come in, right?
Yeah.
So let's go have coffee. Let me tell you my story, right? Understand that you are being stronger by asking for help than you are by hiding from the help that you need.
Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you, like, one of the hardest things in writing this book was not actually writing or not actually promoting and getting out. It was releasing it.
Yeah.
And a couple weeks before the release date, for the first time, I held a physical copy in my hand. I had an author copy, right, a proof copy.
Right.
And I held it in my hand, and I broke down. Before that, it was a PDF. It wasn't real.
Right.
I could send it to somebody to go, hey, can you read this? But it wasn't like real.
Yeah.
And that week for me was awful. And I probably should have learned. I should have reached out to my wife to be like, hey, I'm really struggling. But I was like, I can't do this. I cannot put this out. I cannot let other people see where I struggle, because what are they going to think of me? And the complete opposite has happened. Right. I mean, you and I traded a couple of emails the last few days talking about your story, which we never would have talked about had I not put this out. And there's so many people that have reached out and said, hey, man, like, me too. Right. And it's bittersweet, because on one hand, I'm like, oh, it's not just me. Right. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, it's everybody. It's everybody out there.
I think that's one of the most incredible reasons that I want people to go buy this book, because you're going to relate at some level to some of these things. And so sitting in your private closet and you're reading this book and you're in your room, your man cave or whatever, you're going to go, oh man, I did that. Now, one of the other things in your book, when you reach out for help, don't always assume the person that's going to help you is really qualified. Let me give you a good example. Right. After my first divorce, my dad said, son, I want to send you to a doctor. I want you to talk to him. And I met with this doctor. And in my best military, I just explained everything. And he said, well, there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm tough. I got through this divorce. No, I didn't. It devastated me.
Yeah.
It really hurt.
Yeah.
And I had lost my family.
Right.
And I was the problem. And I knew it. And I think you're going to have to, in my opinion, you better seek God first, or you're going to get a false prophet coming through the door.
Yeah. Jim, let me say what you're saying is right on point, because I sought my pastor, my father in the ministry, right? Thinking that I can go to my pastor and he can help me and my children's mom, my wife at that time. Worst counselor ever. Worst counselor ever. And that's what taught me that just because you're a pastor does not mean that you're a good counselor.
Yeah.
Our bishop, he sent a lot of his parishioners to our training. We train people for lay counseling. And he said he does it because he knows he doesn't have the patience or the wherewithal. And that I appreciated that, because he said, I don't want to talk to a grown man about what he went through when he was 10 years old. I just don't have the patience for that, but I know it's needed. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go send people who that our people can come to. You have to be very mindful what you're saying, Jim. Everybody is not qualified to meet you at your point of need. And if they're not facilitating the need that you have, find somebody else.
Yeah. And I say there's only one person that's qualified to meet you where you are.
Yeah.
And that's the topic of this book. Yeah.
And guys, let's talk about that for a second, because there are experiences that I believe many of us have had, maybe all of us have had, and I related some of that to you. But at 12 years old, you had an experience which you didn't realize, because a lot of people, if you start talking about spiritual warfare, if you start talking about demons, oh, that's something in the movies that Dan Brown wrote about. That's something. No, it's for real.
It's real.
So tell that story about when you were 12 years old, please.
So I'm going to start forward, and then I'll get to backwards.
Okay.
And then you cut me off when when you have to.
Well, we do have a time limit, but go for it.
So I had gone through traditional counseling, and it was helpful. We talked about the P's on the plate. It was very, very helpful for me. But I kind of was plateauing, and I was still dealing with a lot of stuff mentally. There was a lot of, I will say, supernatural, spiritual, sort of divine timing, divine path things that were happening in my life that I did not recognize. And it ultimately led me to speak with someone who specializes in emotion code. And I didn't know what emotion code was. And it's energy healing, it's positive and negative energy, and the thought process that there's energy everywhere and it has an impact on your body.
Right.
It sounded crazy to me. But I was willing to give it a try based on some things that were going on in my life with my wife and my daughter, or my son, and this person who specialized in emotion code. And in my fourth session with her, she told me that I had a low vibrational entity that had attached itself to my soul. Mm-hmm. And as a person that had gone through my entire life as I can see it, taste it, touch it, smell it, okay, it's real. Mm-hmm. If it's not that, it's made up. And so when she told me that, it kind of rocked me. And we worked backwards from that. She's like, all right, well, I think this low vibrational entity, which again sounds insane. She's like, I think this is from about when you were like 11, 12 years old. Is there anything around that time that you were doing that would have been spiritual? And I was like, well, maybe. And so the thoughts started flooding back in my head of messing with a Ouija board when I was 12 years old with one of my neighborhood friends. The Hasbro game, right?
Yeah.
With the like, hey, does Amy like me? Yes or no? And like you move the stupid piece around. And we had spent a lot of time with it that summer. And at the time, right, I was 12. I'm like, this is stupid. And so that rocked me. And that really was sort of the path shift for me. Although I think the path had been set by God for a millennium, but that was sort of the shift in path of like, okay, I need some different kind of help here. The traditional counseling, which I'm not poo-pooing, it's for everybody, but I needed some different kind of help right there in that moment.
You needed spiritual warfare.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of us, again, I've been through some of this as well. We've talked about, and I don't want to belabor the fact, but it's not just all in your mind, bozo. It's you got other problems going on, and you've got to go and get help. And I did for when I went through that. That's a big part of that reaching out. And I think that one of the things that happened to me was through mine, and see if this relates to you guys, that's when I really changed from knowing about Jesus and knowing about God and knowing about the spirituality to having a relationship.
Yep.
And when that changed, all of a sudden I felt and saw the importance of having that relationship.
Yeah.
That is the strength that I went through. And I saw that in your book, Ben.
Yeah.
And
Jim,
this is important. Yeah.
I was just going to say what I hear Ben talking about is a lot of the things that, again, from a counselor perspective, just from the cognitive behavioral perspective, quite often most counselors stay right there, not taking into consideration that we, just like God is triune, we're trichotomous. We're spirit, soul, and body.
Yeah.
And we have to go deeper, right?
Yeah.
We have to go below the surface of the behavior that we're seeing, go below the emotions, go deeper into that spiritual aspect and deal with that, because there are beliefs down inside of us. Like you said, right? There's something that has attached itself to you, trying to cause you to keep from, it always hides in the dark, right? The deeper it is, the darker it is.
Oh, yeah.
So it always hides in the dark. And until we can uncover that, shine God's light on it, right? And now it expose it, then we can deal with it.
Yeah.
Quite often, because we are great at compartmentalizing, right? We've packed it away and we don't want to bring it to the surface.
Yeah. And for me, I didn't really grow up with I wasn't a believer. There was a church that we attended as kids,
Right.
and it was in our actually it was across the field from my house. You could throw a baseball and
Right.
land in the parking lot. And my family was they were members of the church, but we didn't really go. We had to go until we were 16 and got confirmed. That was sort of the rule. And then once that happened, I'm like, cool, I'm done. And I would sit in the services because I had to and just listen to the sermon. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get this. There's nothing there behind it. And so when I found out this low vibrational entity had attached to itself, I was like, again, this sounds Hollywood boogity man sort of stuff. Like, I don't know what's happening. And I didn't even know that God was going to be the answer until the very next day. And there's a really cool story about how that happened that I write about in my book that's available on Amazon right now.
I want you to go, hey, guys, go to the book.
No spoiler alert.
Go to the book.
So I didn't know I was looking for that. So from a counseling perspective, I never thought to look spiritually.
Right.
I was just looking for the mental. How do I make this stronger so that I can deal with things?
Right.
I never thought to reach out to God for help.
Okay, I want to then take the next step, because this book is so tremendous. You found a church, you got involved, you went on a journey to El Salvador.
Yeah.
I don't think we got time. We could put 10 of these programs together to talk about this book and all the experiences you had. I think this is critically important, because many of the things that a lot of people kind of scoff at, go, oh no, that doesn't happen. It happened to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It happened to you.
And I wouldn't even say I found a church. I look at it as like God reached down, grabbed my hand and said, come on, you follow me. And he led me to a church, not even knowing I was looking for it. And so the morning after I had found out about this thing that had attached itself to my stuff, to me, I found myself knocking on the door, looking for just help, looking for any help. And so I got saved right there. My wife and I both got saved right there on the spot. And it was just incredibly freeing. And so I was like, wow, I'm a new person. I like everything has changed, but there's still little tiny doubts about like who this God person is and what he can do. And so 9 months later, I find myself on a mission trip with our church to El Salvador. And even the path getting to that point was, I say, well, the universe works in mysterious ways, and what a coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence. I had lunch with the pastor, and we were kind of talking about things that were upcoming and how busy he was. And he told me about this trip, and I was like, okay, what are you going to do? Just hand out some water bottles and like build some steps for some, some orphanages? And he was like, no, man, we minister to the people. And man, he was right. We ministered to the people, and I saw some pretty amazing things on that journey.
Okay, in this book is an amazing journey to El Salvador, and I highly recommend you see it, read it, and get it. You can go to Amazon. This has been Duelley, and I got to tell you, we all should be reading this book, and then we need to go back and read another book because there's so much more to getting your head right. From the movie Cool Hand Luke, the one statement, get your head right, boss. Well, this is going to be something that shows you a way. When we come back, I want to have a short discussion about how you got mentored to write this book, because actually the guy who helped you is a friend of mine. So this is great. This is important. Again, stay with us. You're going to learn a lot, but you're going to want to learn more about yourself. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thanks to our great sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage, Healing Thine Heart's Ministry, and Symbios Integrative Health. Now, let's get back to this conversation. Well, Ben, thank you for being on board. We're talking about so much in mental health. We're talking about your book. We're talking about recovery. We're talking about salvation. And to me, a lot of people think, well, when you talk about, Jim, you're a chaplain and you pal around with Cedric, you talk about salvation. I'm not worried about life after death. And I said, I'm not either, because I know where I'm going. Amen. But let me tell you, Jesus said he came to not only help us to that part of our being, but to help us an abundant life every day.
More abundant.
And I can't think of anything more destructive than when your plate of peas explodes, that we were talking about. I can't think of anything more destructive than when you overreact in a business meeting, because that's one thing too many, one straw too many.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything more horrible happens when a guy goes, oh my God, bartender, bring me another scotch. Bartender, bring me a big scotch.
Yeah. Bring the bottle.
And one of the big problems that I saw in the Navy, and that I did too, guys, we medicated everything with alcohol.
Yes.
And they don't call alcohol spirits for nothing.
Right.
Because you get into that mindset and it changes your body chemistry. It changes your mind. And that opens you up to a lot of negativity. Because that's what the sugar, that's what alcohol, and a lot of people don't realize the reason you get high is not because of the sugar and the alcohol, but because of the oxygen deprivation to the brain, which allows bad things to start happening.
Absolutely.
So with that, Ben, what would you say to somebody about how you started the book? You knew you had to do it. How did you go and get started?
Yeah.
Tell me about the title, too. I'm interested in that.
Well, the day I was saved, I was riding in the car with my son, and I heard God's voice for the first time. And it was, and I'm not being facetious, I heard a voice out loud. And it kind of freaked me out at first, but it was so comforting. And the voice said, right here over my left shoulder, said, "You need to tell your story." And I looked over at my son, and I looked behind me in the car to see if anybody was there, and there was nobody there. And I was like, what was that? For 9 months, I didn't know what that meant. I thought I tried a couple things, put together some PowerPoint slides that I was going to deliver at our church, which did not go over well, but it just felt clunky, and I didn't know what to do with that voice. And so when I came back from El Salvador, I didn't hear it again, but I saw the words, like, "You need to tell your story," and I was like, oh, that's what you meant. Not just the story of like how I struggled, but like how God prevailed and how God performed miracles right in front of me. That's the story that I need to tell. And so if you would have told me 3 years ago, hey man, you're going to be saved, you're going to go to El Salvador, you're going to write a book, I'd be like, you are high. There's no chance that that's happening. But I got back from from El Salvador, and I landed here in Dallas, and I got home, and I just immediately started like typing out things that I saw down there. And I reached out to a bunch of folks that I knew and friends of friends that I knew. A mutual friend of ours, I reached out. He's a retired Navy captain. He's written a whole bunch of books. And so, I was linked up with him and asked that question of like, hey, how do you write a book? Don't overthink this question. This is not, I'm like literally like, what do you do? Because I was a math major. I don't write good. I don't read good. Like I think numbers. And so I had a lot of conversations with people, and then kind of realized like, it's not that it's easy. It's not that it's difficult. You just have to step. You just need one step. just start writing stuff down. And then when you get enough stuff, then start arranging it. And then, you format it a little bit. And then you reach out to people for editing help. And it's not rocket surgery, right? Many, many, many people have written books, but so many other people want to write it.
Right.
And they're just afraid, or there's spiritual warfare, or
Right.
they're stuck. And they have a little voice going, dude, your story's dumb.
Exactly.
Your story's stupid. Nobody's
Right.
going to read your story.
And apathy. I know a lot of people who have a great story,
Yeah.
but just won't step out and move on.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was amazing, the experience of writing. I already started the second one. I don't know when it's going to be out, but I already started book number 2. It's not a testimony. I'm dabbling a little bit in spiritual warfare and kind of what I learned, but
Yeah,
looking
great.
forward to it. It's going to be awesome.
Okay.
Guys, this is so important. So again, go to Amazon and find this. You have a website.
I do have a website.
What's that?
BenDuelley.com.
Okay, there it is on the screen. By the way, that I don't know who came up with that, and that's you in a flight suit. And you did say that your flight suit was real tight when you.
It was a little tight. That is actually me out of the Navy. It's my flight suit. It's a real photo of me, and it
Wow.
is this. You can hear the tiny screams of the zipper on the other side, trying to hold everything in.
Guys, this has been a real joy, and we're so glad to have you aboard. There's Eleanor and the kids.
Yep.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this book, and it has helped me a lot to relive some of the things that I went through. And Cedric, I'm giving you my copy.
I want it. Did you mark it up?
There you go.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we like to close with a prayer. And so today I'm going to say, join me. Dear God in heaven,
Thank you, Lord.
we are so eternally grateful and thankful for men like Ben Duelley that you have inspired and you have helped to come alongside of us and tell a story that's not just their story, but our story and your story of how you love us and you take care of us. So, dear God, we thank you. We thank you for the hedge of protection around our active duty military to protect them throughout the world. We thank you for our first responders protection, that you are helping them. And we thank you, dear God, for the veterans, those of us who continue the mission and are working to bring this nation back together, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And this is Veterans Impact Show.